Hey, Hunter, I want to first off say thank you for joining me today. It's awesome to have you. We haven't spoken face to face in about 6, 8 weeks. Obviously, we connect on commenting on each other's posts all the time. We message through DM, very well connected there, me being part of the UCM 3.0 community and doing that. And it's an amazing community. And one of the things that you do there, obviously, is a networking piece. And that's what you're kind of known for, right? Like, but obviously, really good sales professional. You do really good sales training in there. You really talk people and really grow people to really get out into the world because this space is very, very tough. So I'm honored to have you on, and I can't thank you enough for doing it because you got so much knowledge,
Oh,
and and I think you and I both have same views on some things, different points on others, and I think that's a beautiful place. And so I wanted to have you on, and one thing that we kind of chatted right before we kind of started, hitting record here, was just talking about being in the game and posting content for how long. You've been doing it for a long time, just like I have.
yeah, I think for me, I really dove in and I guess even before jump that, super humble to be here. I appreciate you asking me the people like I was mentioning earlier, right? Like JD, Bill Walsh, Erica, David, like just absolutely amazing people that I look up to, amazing elites that I almost feel like they're almost out of my league. And so I even appreciate you, like I said, being able to have me on. But yeah, when it comes to posting content, it's something that I've, dove deeper to, especially over the past couple years. But even before then, severe fears and self-confidence and esteem issues, just because I just was not a good reader and writer, like so bad. I can't use tenses right. My grammar's off. And it was really hard to like formulate ideas and then put them into words. Like it was just so difficult. And I just had to like start and just try. And but I've been starting to kind of find my voice, and I'm grateful for my wife. My wife is an exceptional writer. She's a published author. She went to school for English. Like she as an undergrad, she was posting articles and going to conferences and speaking about them. Just absolutely exceptional. And so she's helped me a lot with the absolute basics. And even over the, just fairly recently, she was like, wow, your writing's actually really good. Like you can see all these details. And so I've been really grateful for her. But yeah, the posting content has been a lot fun. It's now more of a passion for mine. I took a little bit of time off over the past month because I kind of went into monk mode of things that I was thinking about and working on, and just wanted to kind of just go and build out. But it's good to be back. Yeah, I was just admiring how long you've been posting for. I think it's something that's still undervalued. A lot of people don't do it, especially when it comes to personal branding of people getting to know you. And I mean, you've been doing it for decade and a half, well before like when I was still posting like Lil Wayne quotes on my Facebook when I was in high school, so like it was just really impressive to see you.
I love your hashtag napkin notes, by the way.
Hey, I appreciate that. Yeah,
It's one of my favorite things about you that always attracted me right off the bat. It was amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. For me, once again, when I start writing long, I'm kind of like, oh, right. I kind of like, how can I say something that's just short and powerful? Like, and I kind of thought of the idea of like, man, it's just, I like this idea of like, you could just write an idea on a napkin and post it. And so I kind of just took that over to Facebook, and it's something that for
How
me,
many businesses have been started that way?
what's that?
How many businesses started that way on a napkin, right? Like people have their napkins up in a frame. Like our business idea was sitting having cocktails or whatever, and that's where it was started. So it's one of those things. It's a layer, kind of like an onion. There's so many different layers to the napkin. It's where sometimes it's you put out something where it's definitely a mental aspect, philosophical aspect, business aspect, and so I always love them because they're a very powerful thing you always put out, and I think it's a very unique thing you do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, the idea originally with it was that I was just writing to myself, just these ideas, and I'd post them, and kids in the future, family members can go back and look at these kind of lessons and ideas and kind of pull some wisdom out of it as they come. So that's kind of the big idea of it. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, lots of good things start on napkins. Harry Potter, for example,
Yep. Oh, exactly. And you bringing up, that I've been doing it for a long time. So first off, thank you for even going through and scrolling. It lets me know. And there's sometimes I share a post or it's like something I did 3 years ago or 8 years ago or 10 years ago. and kind of like what this podcast is about, necessity versus a commodity. How do you stand out from everybody else? And so you see, I've been in fitness for 20 years and personal development for 20 years, mindset, because if we look at fitness, I didn't invent a push up, a squat. I didn't invent eat less to lose weight, any of that type of stuff. So how do I separate myself, and putting that content out was a big deal. One thing, it's interesting to hear you say that you don't feel like some of the writing isn't as good. And I used to compare myself to people all the time, which prevented me from doing stuff. I still do that. One thing I've noticed really interesting is, and I've seen over the past year and a half, 2 years, since I've kind of moved away from that fitness area, over the last probably 3-4 months, especially since I joined UCM, and because I didn't have confidence sometimes putting some of the stuff out that I was, right? Because it was a shift from fitness to something else. But over the last 3 weeks, I've had previous clients reach out to me and ask for business advice now. And it's a hard thing to flip flop, right? But if you never do it, you're never going to.
Right.
And so using some of the principles that you guys had, and it actually gave me some confidence to go out and actually start, hey, I'm going to start doing that. This podcast I've actually thought about for like 3 years, and I haven't done it. And it was finally like, okay, I need to do this. This is something I felt like for a long time, but I still don't feel like some of my writing is good. And I don't really care anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like when I had my own business, I'd shoot out an email and I always get a joke from a client being like, oh, Scott, you wrote that email. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, all the misspelling, run-on sentences and things like. At a certain point, I'm like, I don't really care. This is me. Whatever. People are going to critique you on that. It is what it is. One thing on the content, and looking in a space and what you teach people. The hard thing about social media sometimes is me putting out my point of view, and then you seeing a different point of view and commenting and starting arguments.
Yeah.
And that I see that happen quite a bit. Actually, Michael Dunleavy, he posted something the other day. It was unique. Hey, what type of closer are you? Which I don't remember the 2 terms he technically used, but I basically commented like, that's a problem is people label themselves. You did a thing about, introvert, extrovert. That was the thing. Like we put ourselves on too many labels.
Totally.
And other people start drinking Kool-Aid too much.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you don't see different visions. So when you're putting stuff out there, do you ever feel like, hey, I'm going to push this perspective of mine, or I'm going to use some marketing words to get a certain reaction this way? Like, what's your thought process on your content specifically?
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple principles that I like to follow with it. Number one, my main idea is like, are these ideas that I'm sharing out, like, are they going to be helpful? Based on what I've heard from people, based on what I've talked with them about, based on things that they maybe struggle and they struggle with, like, is this idea going to help? And so if I feel like, yes, I'm going to go ahead and put it out there. Now, in order to deliver that message, I like to use words that people commonly use and believe in. And the reason why is because then it's going to be able to allow them to accept the message easier. But then what you can go about doing is changing and adjusting the ideas of it. So for example, right, like people are like, I'm extroverted, I'm introverted. And you hear that conversation a lot in sales.
Agreed.
And so I like to use those words because people will be familiar with them and read them. But then I like to add things in there. Just example with the extroverted, introverted, like one of the main common misconceptions is like, it's always a communication type. I'm introverted, I don't communicate well. I'm extroverted, you communicate well. That's always kind of like the default.
Correct. Yeah.
To talk with people and help them realize like, hey, these aren't communication styles, they're energy styles. And so generally speaking, right, people who are extroverted get energy from talking with people, and introverted people get energy from being alone and like recharging up, right? It doesn't mean that you can't be a good communicator. And so for me, I feel like I have naturally inverted tendencies based on maybe my upbringing, how I grew up. My dad's very shy, for example. And so that was just kind of the part of the process. And so I think a lot of that was maybe either taught or part of my genetics or whatever it is. But I had to learn how to communicate. And there's even times like for me, I avoid concerts because the stimulus is and large groups of people, because the stimulus is just too much for me. I just get drained. I'm tired and I want to leave. And so I try and avoid those. And I've learned that about myself. And so I like to kind of use words to make it really simple. And I like to use words that people commonly know, and then maybe adjust how they see those words and explaining it in a way. And so I will, but I agree with you 100%. I wrote a post a while ago on labels. I was like, I don't really believe in extrovert, introversion. I don't believe in morning people, night people. I don't believe in, I'm a Taurus or I'm a Leo or I'm this. I was like, what I do really believe in is strong labels. And that as you label yourself, it has a lot of influence in your life. And I think what's nice about that, you can change these labels at any time. It doesn't have to be this way. And that's why, like I said, you made that comment. I completely agreed with it. And, but yeah, finding the balance of the belief of like, I like to challenge labels, but then using a message to communicate, meet people where they're at, and then going about teaching and changing that over time and helping them see a different way it's a tough balance. I don't think I figured it out, but I'm trying my best working towards that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because labels can be really powerful. They can be really holding you back, right? Like if I'm working with a client one-on-one, lots of times we have to reframe brain, right?
Yeah.
Like in the way that your perception is, in the way that you labeled yourself, you're technically reframing it to a different label. So labels aren't necessarily bad, but you have to go, hey, wow, is this one really serving me? Because if I'm an introvert and I'm labeling myself at that, so I never, like to your point, try to become better communicator, so I become a good sales individual and realize, hey, I can't take 8 calls straight because I need to step back to get my energy back.
Exactly.
Then you're going to struggle big time, right? But all of a sudden that introvert part can be a huge asset.
Yep. So like for me, I saw that especially in my sales career. It's that I operated absolute peak for 4 hours. If I went like beyond that, it was really, I was worse. Like everything was worse. I closed less. And even knowing that I'd have to go for 8 hours was just like, I like couldn't do it. So I often worked part-time, and what that allowed me to do is I actually performed at a higher level. I was oftentimes the top revenue generating person, even though I was working a half to a third of the hours. And that was because I knew what my space was and what I operated best in. And then I went that. And I tried lots of ways of pushing and how could I expand it? And maybe I'm just not, like I said, maybe it's just like these things are hard to know, right? Like I just know over data and over time, 4 hours, that was like, and I was high level. And within that, I was closing 70, 75%, consistently. And a lot of people would ask me questions about that. And I was making solid money working part-time. I was just happy with that. Then I can go out and do other stuff. That was really nice. Spend time with my wife, go to school, whatever it was.
Yeah. And I think some sales reps, you bring up a really good point of, hey, 4 hours, right? And there's so many offers out there that if you're not on the phones for 8 hours, they're not going to hire you. Right. And that's where being transparent, I think, up front, like looking for a good offer. And just because someone says, hey, you need to be here for 8 hours, you need to show up for this meeting and this meeting every day, that doesn't make it a bad offer. It just doesn't fit for what you're doing. And I've had some conversation with owners like that, like, hey, here's how I operate, because I'm very much like you too. And I'm an introvert. And this goes back to childhood. Like if I would have grown up today, I wonder how many medications I've been put on. Because you brought up the concert thing and it immediately plays stories back into my brain, because as a kid in certain environments, at times I would walk into a classroom, there's so much going on, I actually go completely white. Like, it's such an over stimulation that I can't get my bearings. So then at that point as a kid, you don't know what's going on. So I was rambunctious, right?
Totally.
Working in bars and restaurants, I was able to do that. But if I knew the environment, was fine, because that is my environment. I also knew where I could step away if I was getting overstimulated. Also owning my own gym, I would get there, wake up at 4 a.m, get there at 5, be there until 1 o'clock, go home, eat, take a 45-minute nap, get back there by 3:30 and work until 7. Now, during those, like 5 o'clock, I might have 5 to 8, but then I've got a little bit of a break. And then from 8 to 12, right? And so I know I work best in blocks as well. And, you kind of bring a couple of things you brought up. You brought up monk mode that made me think about David, but actually we just talked last week. And I had the discussion with him about doing certain things for a season for a certain reason. And there are times that, yeah, you might need to grind on the phones for 8 hours a day, but if that's not going to make you happy and you're not going to be able to spend time with your family, it's actually making you less productive. That's not a conducive thing. And you have to kind of know that. I think that's where labels a lot of times hold people back, is you're trying to put yourself into a mold or give yourself an excuse of why you can't. And if that's what it's doing, if it's detrimental, that's a very bad label to put yourself in.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up such amazing points, and I agree the same as well. And so for me, especially when it came to practice, because I know oftentimes when it comes to sales, it's like you need the reps. And oftentimes we try and like just pick up the phone and just do as many as possible. For me, I felt like the quality of practice is what helped me improve the most and the most quickly. And so for me, because I was like fully attentive and putting so much, like I knew that 4 hours was gonna be good, I could play a lot within that. And I noticed that like my sales skills improved drastically when I was working 4 hours and 8 hours, because I wasn't just like, I have to get through this, but it was like, I instead of like, oh, I have to get through 8 hours, it was like, I only have 4 hours,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And so I went and was really able to put all my energy into really focusing. And that when I was able to come back down and like I needed to step away, I think I was able to recharge and think on those things more clearly. And it improved a lot for me, right? And just like you said, everyone's just kind of, it's just kind of different. And so for some people, just doing the 8 hours, that's going to help them best learn. Just getting so many reps, trying again, and they get energy from that. I think that's awesome for them. Like go
Yeah.
into it. And so, but yeah, I noticed for me, 4 hours, I just knew like that is like peak hunter. Like I could perform at my highest levels, and still to this day, it still seems to be the case.
Yeah. And I've discovered that with myself as well. It's how I schedule out my day. It's basically blocks. It's not that I can't work for 6 or 10 hours straight. I just can't do the same thing.
Yep.
And so right now too, working with several different business owners, helping them build certain things out. I'm actually not taking calls at the moment. And so role playing is really key to keep that sharp, and you kind of bring up, you know, just smiling and dialing isn't always a way to get better. Role playing with someone that's not very good is not going to get you any better either. And so making sure that if you need to stay sharp, you're actually doing that, the whole iron sharpens iron type of deal.
Yeah.
In a lot of different groups that you and I are both in, you'll see people like, hey, who wants to role play today? And it's 3 guys getting together that've never done sales in their life. Like, you're not going to get better there.
Yep.
Now you get those 3 people into a call with you at, let's say, UCM. Now you're the one that's going to lift them up and actually get them better. And so there's certain things there of, are you doing something that's actually progressing you forward? Are you operating in the best operating system for you? And for me, it sounds like for you as well, block time is really the best way to handle it. And think about, if you were doing 8 hours a day, like you said, you would see the numbers go down. You're not spending time with your wife. You're not spending time with your family. You're making less money. Now the owner's on you. Stress is way higher, rather than, hey, this is where I'm going to be the most successful. And you're on the top of the board. Those are 2 different results. And technically one was doing twice the work, but that was way detrimental to a positive result. And I think a lot of people fall into that category as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you bring lots of good points. Yeah, it was so funny. It was shocking to me that I made more money working 4 hours a day than I did 8 hours every day. It was like, I'd never thought that was even possible, because it's like, hey, more work, more money, right? Really, especially when it came down to sales, it was more production. Like, how am I going to able to perform at a higher level to close more deals than just extending that over time? And I think you bring up a great thing with role plays. Like, I think role plays are a great practice. I think it's a great way to keep your skills sharp. I think it's even a great way to even improve your skills a lot. And my approach to role plays always was, I never want to role play a whole call. I like absolutely hate it. It's too long. There's too many details there. I always broke it down to like, hey, what do I need to specifically work on? And so for me, if it was tapping into pain, I was only going to role play like that section of the call. Or if it was around making my pitch more personalized, I was only going to role play that part. Or if I was like, hey, I have a new idea on how to handle this objection, I have a new analogy, I have a certain story, let's just role play that and just kind of see how it feels. Let's try different iterations.
Yep.
Or hey, I wanted to try a new line of questioning. Like I would only role play those specific parts, and then we try and then put it all together basically on the call. And we can have that data. We can basically, like, if we listen to our calls, we can see where we drop off. Hey, this is where I lost the person. Hey, this is where I felt like it was really weak, here, or this is where I felt like I assumed the wrong thing. Then I can just practice that specific part, go implement it, and then come back. And that's something that helped me a lot with staying sharp and improving really quickly.
I agree. And that's the same way I handle it as well. And I don't think you'll find a sales professional or sales trainer or coach or anything out there that says, hey, completely replace everything you're doing, right? Because again, it's kind of when, if I was working with a client that's trying to lose weight, I never gave them 10 things to do, because you can't figure out what they're doing right, what's wrong, what actually worked, right? You're just throwing a bunch of pieces out of the puzzle. And so if you're trying to do a million things at one time, you're distracted. And so being hyper focused, I'm going to get really good at this section, that's going to improve, and you will actually see that number improve, and then you can move on to the next thing. And I think that's a key thing that a lot of people don't understand, is like, hey, I'm gonna go practice and read my whole script.
Yeah. And I grew up playing sports. And so it would just be like, hey, we're only going to scrimmage all the time, instead of like, hey, your shooting sucks. Like you missed all of your threes, or hey, your passing sucks. Like when you went to go pass the soccer ball, it was far, it was off, it didn't lead the person. Like, let's just drill that specific part, so that then when we incorporate it in the games, it's going to be so much more natural, right? Like that same idea. And I pulled that to sales, and it helped me tremendously, so much.
When you're looking at going back to like posting content,
Yeah.
One of the things that you guys really stress at UCM, pointing out the aspect of marketing out there, right? Like guaranteed placement. It's funny watching marketing over the years, and you'd have, hey, we'll get you 100 leads a month. Well, that was all the hype at that time. Now people are like, high quality leads. Who cares about getting 100? You want people that actually want to buy from you, right? Yeah. And so marketing plays a big part of stuff. And so when you're putting stuff out on social media, you're marketing yourself.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to hear your point of view on this, because some people, when they've started putting posts out there, they're putting posts out of what they're going through at the moment. As an example, maybe, hey, I'm adjusting my mindset, so I'm reading this book on David Goggins and I took this from it, right? But then there's other individuals out there that obviously have upped their game to where I'm marketing now. And some people can't separate even though it's a personal page, they can't separate, hey, this is a personal page, but this person's marketing a business. So it's a completely different entity. It's a completely different type of post. And I think that sometimes some people forget that and realize, hey, the language that they're using is marketing to a specific result, right? And I think there's some conflict that kind of starts with that, or a really good benefit of getting that person a bunch of stuff. What's your kind of take on when you're putting posts out, having it be personal, have it be more marketing, and how do you decipher between the two when you're watching someone in the online space?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so there's a couple of things I look at. Is first off, it's like, what's the intent of the post? Like, why am I doing this? And so some things that go into that is like, well, who's the audience I'm talking to and who I'm reaching out to? So sometimes what will happen is if I'm putting out to a certain audience and someone from a different audience or background sees it and maybe disagrees with it, I'm not going to worry about them because I'm not writing to them oftentimes. So it doesn't really bother me that much. And so they can come in and disagree with it or feel like it's not for them. Most of the time, what typically happens is when you throw out a post, and let's say you're looking to speak to business owners, but you have like friends, family members, people from other fields, that you were networking with, maybe able to see it. Oftentimes, because it's not even relevant to them, they just move on. That's typically generally what happens. On occasion, you'll have someone that wants to be the keyboard warrior or wants to kind of just talk and chatter. And that's fine. They can come on and you can just say like, hey, thanks for sharing your thoughts, and just leave it at that. Like, that's how I like to do it. Is just like, hey, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Right. Like, they feel really strong about Lee. Once again, it's not, and this is my view in sales, like I can't convince them. They have to go about convincing themselves to change, right? I can't
Yeah.
change them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I look at is like, I think putting out all the content, a lot of people are worried like, well, I have my personal stuff, well, I have all this. I think what's nice about the personal stuff, in my opinion, is that even in business, it allows you to get to know more about the person anyway. So I don't think there's no value to it, and it makes you more human. And I think those are beneficial. I think within reason. Like I remember one guy is like, yeah, I'm thinking about starting my own personal profile just because I'm worried that business owners will like see pictures of me getting sloshed. I don't know what that word means. Maybe you know what that means.
Drunk.
You know, just drunk or
Yeah.
or
They're not sober anyway, right? Yeah.
yeah. I've never heard that word before. And I was like, maybe not post about that, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe that's like we're getting too personal here, right? And I think it's beneficial. Like there was one gentleman, for example, that I was talking with, and he was in mergers and acquisitions. So he buys and sells multi-million-dollar online businesses. He was just an M&A guy. And but he posted about playing chess and playing with Sham Shanklin and that being passionate. And that's how we went about connecting, because I was getting in chess. I was enjoying learning about it and experiencing it. And so we were able to kind of like talk and play a couple games. And then we were able to talk more about business, because he was like, hey, I like you as a person. Let's talk a little bit about what you do in your business life. And it opened up that conversation to be a lot more natural. And kind of, and so I like doing both. I think there's value to both. And I don't think we should be ashamed of either or, because those things in your personal life are parts of you, and it's only going to help people to get to know and understand you better, even in business as well. And I learned like that story and that principle, that idea from Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They obviously are great billionaires in a different fields. They connected over the game of bridge and sharing strategies for bridge. I mean, that's some old people game right there, but like they connected over that, and that opened up the conversations about investing and business ideas that then led Warren Buffett to investing billions of dollars into the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, right? So like, I think there's such value to both. I think we get so judgmental on it, or think like this is only gonna be valuable. I think there's so much value in talking about like the amount of people that have reached out to me about my napkin notes or me posting about my fitness stuff, and that how that's open and led to more business stuff has been amazing and surprising. It seems counterintuitive, right? Because it's like these people care about business. I'm going to post about business and that's what's going to connect. But these personal things allowed us to connect in a different bridge that opened up the conversations, the avenues to the other things as well.
Yeah. And, you talking about, Warren Buffett and, Bill Gates, Gary Vee talks about that as well. Before he was Gary Vee, right? Like there was some guy
he was
unattainable.
Back when he was Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah. And he was and he was unattainable. He looked at somebody, I can never reach this guy. Right. But started following him, realized the guy was a huge football fan, reached out to him. They started talking about their fantasy football teams, and then opened up that business relationship that he ended up going in there. And I think that's a really key piece. A lot of people, they're always talking business, or they're always talking personal, not a blend of both, right? And it's a quote of, I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember it offhand, but if you Google it, so it's the master in the art of living, that you're going every moment that business and personal is intertwined. And so it's the combining of both. And that's where really people are successful. And that's where like building a personal brand, the term brand is a pretty broad term nowadays. But to your point, people want to see you as a human. Know you personally, understand what you like, because you have ways to connect. And that type of is a key doorway to get in, rather than me sending you a message going, hey, Hunter, do you guys have any positions open for me? Like I do sales and right, that's not going anywhere. But if I reach out to you and say, hey, XYZ, like, hey, I love that too, I want to blah, 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 blah. It opens up a dialogue. Now you're bringing both people on a human level, rather than, hey, I'm just looking for something from you. And social media has turned very unsocial, but it's becoming more social. And it's one thing that you guys teach there, which is awesome. And, everybody there is very, very, very social. And I think this industry as a whole is very social as well. With you getting the right groups, and people will do anything for you bend over backwards. And making those contacts. Looking at how do you differentiate, like you said, you put a post out, someone's from something else, they have a different point of view. If you're reading someone else's post of differentiating between, hey, they're drawing a line in the sand, being very specific here, and it's essentially, this is a marketing post going, hey, I don't agree with it. Do you comment on stuff like that, or you just let it go? Knowing the difference, because I think that's one thing that some people in this space, they jump down some people's throats on a post. And I like to push the envelope. So I like to, if someone has a strong point of view,
Yeah.
I like to give them the opposite one, right? Have a dialogue going back and forth. And normally, and again, Michael Dunleavy put something out, and I think it was the third one. I'm like, dude, I agree with your first initial post. I 100% agree. But I said, but also it's a label, and the terms that you're using are marketing language, which again is separating people when there shouldn't even be a separation there.
Yeah. That makes sense. I definitely have. And there's definitely times where I've poked fun. There's definitely times where I've disagreed. Some of the stuff where it was like, hey, this is probably going to stir the pot a little, right? All that stuff. And part of it is just because part of my foundational as it came to communication and understanding is trying to find where the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And sometimes that meant doing a stance that probably was less than ideal, just to be able to see what would happen and what the boundary was. And so that led to a lot of issues early on in my life. And still will run into some issues in my life as well. But yeah, I definitely, like I said, I definitely have. And I think there's a point to just basically, to challenge. And I think something that me and Michael basically see eye to eye on is like, how are we pursuing truth, right? Like, what is the objective truth? What is the overall truth? And how can we go about finding that out? And sometimes what we'll do is we'll kind of fight back a little bit just to be able to discover what the idea is. And so, yeah, like I said, I've totally done that. And there's times where I knew it was a bad idea and I did it anyway. And I'm still paying the repercussions of that. And I'm still learning too. I'm definitely not perfect as well. But I think especially in kind of the pursuit of like what's true and doing it, I think there's worthwhile in doing that and sharing those ideas, just because, especially when it's on a social platform, it's an open dialogue and there's some two-way there. I think they're putting it out to allow you to comment, or if they weren't open to that, they would just kill the comments, right? Like they'll just share this or whatever. And we can know, but if they open up the comments, like they're open to be able to dialogue. And most of the people that will comment or post, even marketing or their thoughts and ideas, they're opening that discussion up. And some might not like it, but I think that's part of the process of posting content and having to deal with that. And so I've definitely stirred the pot and shared different views and just say, hey, I totally disagree here. Or, hey, I see it completely different. Or, hey, I noticed that you said this, but it doesn't seem congruent. Can you maybe help explain, that idea, right? And, do things out of curiosity to be able to find out. But yeah, that's just part of the game. And it's a whole bunch of just imperfect people doing imperfect things and, connecting. So.
Yeah. And I see it out there quite a lot. And, it's funny because you'll see some posts from some people and they have 1,000 people that are just cheering them on, even if it's completely wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And vice versa. Something that completely right, 1,000 people cheering them on and it's completely right. Anyone that follows me probably knows, hey, Scott's a Christian. He follows God. There's posts about that type of deal. That's really the only thing that I consider a truth. In fact, that will never change. When it comes down to sales, marketing, you're even fitness, you're talking about trying to put 8 billion people on the planet into the same category, what you're talking about. And to think that that's the case of truth and fact is mind boggling. And that's where like I see through some of the marketing and things like that. And that's where I like your term, stir the pot, because I always like to push the envelope at certain times with certain people as well, because I want to get a better understanding of their point of view. It's not to be a dick. It's not to start a fight or an argument. Like, let me see your point of view. Here's my point of view. And sometimes, in comments, it's hard to really get someone's full point of view. So you need to go a little bit deeper with that. and like, here's my point of view. And whether that's good, the bad, whether that's something good coming of it, or, an ugly situation, it is what it is. But everyone's point of view is going to be different by their experiences. And I'm always a firm believer of every conversation I have, there's something I can learn here, and everyone else point of view, I can learn from that point of view. So I like to push them that, hey, my point of view is this, right? I don't go into full, my experience when I have that point of view, it takes too much in the comment section, but kind of like what you said is, hey, I don't agree with this. And there's more context that's put in there, but it's helped me learn faster.
Yep.
Number one, about what's good, what's bad, why I feel like it is. And I'm always open to someone challenging me, and see, I could be wrong, right? Like,
Totally.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. How can you know you're wrong if you never put out your side of view and allow some challenges and different perspectives come in, which I completely 100% agree with. And I remember another reason why I kind of like to go about doing that is there maybe be someone that has a lot of attention on their post.
Yeah.
And so you can go about kind of almost like guerrilla marketing, right? Is that a Dan Kennedy term, right?
Yep.
Of this idea of how can we almost leverage that attention and being able to almost divert it or put it into another way, right? As it comes to strategy. And so oftentimes you sharing a different view, especially if it comes down to different business owners, things like that, it allows them that attention to be diverted. And so that people can start looking right at that idea. And so just to kind of give an example, I remember there was a gentleman that made a post about man, all these sales closers wanting hot inbound leads to fill their calendar and all of these things. And so it got a lot of likes. It got 100, I think 110 likes or something like that, 120 likes. I can't remember. I haven't looked at it in a long time. But I made a comment basically explaining that we need to stop putting down salespeople for saying that. I was like, no, they're not communicating properly, right? What they are trying to express and what they're trying to explain is that they want to work with a company that has a great brand and great marketing, and they've cultivated and built an audience, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that unreasonable to ask?
Correct. Yeah.
Is that crazy that if they're going to be closing deals, they want to work with a business that is putting effort into cultivating that? And it got 80, 90, just this comment that I wrote out got 80, 90
Yep.
likes, right? Or whatever, and a bunch of comments on it. And once again, that was a lot of people were like, yeah, screw these salespeople. Yeah, they're a bunch of whiners and complainers. But then you had all these salespeople who are like, oh yeah, I totally agree with that. That's what we're trying to express. We're probably not expressing it the right way. And why we need to be a little bit more open, because they're kind of they're entitled for saying that. And so that was something where it was completely contradictory to what they were saying, but was able to leverage a lot of attention there, that guerrilla marketing, that then it opened up lots of conversations with me. It allowed me to connect with more people and give them ideas about how they can better communicate with businesses when they're going out and looking for roles. That opened up a lot of people to getting more interviews, landing more jobs as a result of that single comment. And so there's a lot of good that can be done there in the face of disagreement, just because it allows people to see another side of it and make a proper decision based on the argument that they saw, kind of debate, right? And choose basically a path and approach that's going to work better for them.
Yeah, and you're spot on, using that as an example. And if we go back to what we were talking about earlier too, if you put a post out, I will only do sales calls 4 hours straight. That's it. Don't ask me to do anything else. You'd have a bunch of people cheering you on, and somebody else being a business owner dude, I will never hire you, right?
Right.
And so
I'll never go to team meetings or team huddles, and everyone's like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of similar idea, right? And same approach. Right.
Yeah, and there's so much context out, and really that again, you can't understand a perspective, a point of view, a complete understanding from one sentence posted on social media. And I think that's where you see some problems out there, but also some good things, because it does open up a good dialogue, right? And that type of scenario of what you described, right? You hit the nail on the head, because being a sales rep, I've got a unique ability. I've been an entrepreneur and intrapreneur. I've had my online business. I've helped other businesses grow online, and I've done just sales. So I've got 3 points of reference I can come from. And if I see something like that, and I go, hey, I 100% agree with it, and also 100% disagree with it, right? Because of my perspective, I can look at a business owner. If I start a business right now and it's Joe Schmo's widgets, and I call you up and go, Hunter, I want you to be taking calls and on the phones and in the DMs 8 hours a day, starting on Monday. And you go, cool. What do you have in place? And I go, nothing. I'm just starting. You have to do it, and you better be hitting 100K a month, right? Like that's what that's kind of saying. And really, a sales rep, like, well, if you have a brand, if you have a Facebook group, if you have people I can outreach to, there's leads I can call, there's all these type of things, but don't expect me to come in and just grab the phone book and start calling, right? So there's different variations, perceptions, what everyone reads from that. I think everyone starts to need to look at everyone's posts for what they really are.
Yep.
And ask more questions, right? Like it's to a point almost sometimes where it's like, dude, it's like someone on the right and someone on the left of politics on the extremes having an argument or talking religion or those type of scenarios where you're having two people's beliefs, and no one's ever changed their political belief through comments on social media, let's be honest, right? And so you just see people doing that, smashing heads, rather than, hey, we should come together and like, hey, why don't we jump on a call for a half hour? I would love to have a discussion with you about this. This is sweet. Like, I want to hear your point of view. Let's really kind of dive into it. Or be less aggressive sometimes that I see out there online with some people, but it is what it is. And everyone's got their own social media platform. And if I didn't like it, I can just unfollow them, right? Or you don't comment.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of value in that, and just blocking people or unfriending them or whatever, like, especially if it doesn't seem like there's any good or value coming from it, just like, it's always making you angry, it's making you frustrated, just whatever, right?
Yeah, be done with it.
Just be done with it. Yeah.
Looking at the space, you jumped in a while back. You've seen it change a lot since then. I've seen it change a lot. It's obviously going to continue to change and evolve. That's just the way life goes. UCM has changed and evolved a lot. What do you see happening over the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months? There's a lot of speculation on tax regulations, more specific laws and regulations when it comes down to the online space. Like, who knows what's going to happen legally in the next 12 or 24 months? That could change the game drastically. I don't even want to talk about that. But if we're looking at just the pieces of where we're seeing because some really good things are coming to light, the good, the bad, the ugly of what we see, the good offers, the bad offers, the good marketing, the bad marketing, what fits you, what doesn't. Where do you see everything being in 12 to 24 months online with certain things changing? And then also, once we get to that, where are you going to be in the next 12 to 24 months? You personally, UCM, that's going to evolve too. So I'd love to touch base on all three of those points over what's coming.
Yeah, it's a lot to tackle. I'm excited to tackle it. So I think first things first is like, what's going to happen in the market? What's going to happen in the industry as a whole over the next probably like year to 2 years, 3 years. This is how I always feel as it comes to business, and as it comes to markets, and it comes to industries, it comes to specific niches even, right? We can even go as small as that. Is what you see is there's really two truths. There's the current market truth, and then there's like the actual truth of what it is. And so what you see oftentimes that happens is they kind of go like this. They get closer to being more aligned, and then they separate, right? Or maybe it's like this. The truth is always there. It's always the market truth kind of goes like this into the truth, right? And so this is what you're going to see. This is what I believe, okay? For a long time, what the market truth has been, skills are the only thing that absolutely matters in sales, nothing else. You have the skills, you'll have a job. And like, that was that, right? And that, in my opinion, is a market truth, saying that's only one aspect. But anyone that's been in the game knows that there is more to it than just sales skills alone.
Correct.
Right? There's the mindset of it, there's the network of it, there's the interviewing, the negotiating, the offer selection, right, like even the leadership. Like, there's so many other aspects to it, right? That goes into it. Sales skills are absolutely important. You'll never hear me say sales skills are not important, right? If I do, I hope you come find me. Okay, I'll just never say it, because it's totally important, right? It's like saying that being able to be good at basketball is not important to make it in the NBA. That would just be like
Yeah.
In
Asinine. Yeah. Yeah.
so asinine. It'd be so absolutely ridiculous. And so what I believe over the next 1 to 2 years is you're going to see a lot of the sales trainers and the business owners are going to turn and get more in line with the market again. So what you're going to see is more personal branding, more about vetting offers, more about knowing how to network with the right people, how to interview properly, how to negotiate better situations for what your role is. You're going to see more people operating as, instead of just as an employee or just like, hey, here's my skills and my certification, give me a job, right? Kind of like the university, right? You're going to see of like, hey, you need to start thinking about this like a business and as a career. How are you going to provide the new SaaS, which is sales as a service? How are you going to be that person? They have a problem and you're the solution, right, to it. So you're going to see a lot of the messaging and the sales training come back into and align more closely with those truths. Here in the UCM, we're just going to align with what those market truths are, what we've seen over 400 students, our several years experience. I mean, JD himself, right, had 47 offers, right? He's probably made every mistake that you possibly could make in remote sales, right? And knows what the truth is and what's not, right? And so what you're going to see is a lot of people are going to bend back and aligning with that. And once again, it'll go off, right?
Yeah.
In doing that. So that's what I think is going to happen over the next 1 to 2 years in this kind of remote sales industry, is you're going to see more alignment, which I think is awesome.
I think so too.
I'm so pumped for it. I'm excited to see everyone's angles and approaches to those powerful principles that have served us and our students so well, and seeing what they're going to do with it. I think it's going to be a blast. I think it's
Well, and yeah, and biblically speaking, talking about being yoked together, right? Like that's where power is. And I can't remember the actual horse technical name, but there's a horse out there. It's the strongest pulling horse in the world. By itself, it pulls 8,000 pounds.
Jeez.
You connect it with another one and they pull together, it'll pull like 16,000 pounds. But if you actually train them to work together, it's like 24,000 pounds.
It's amazing.
And I think, and then you put 4 of them together, like they're unstoppable type of situation, right? And I think that like you're talking about coming aligned, and rather than you seeing business owners and sales reps, rather than saying, hey, we both are in business together, rather than, hey, you're an employee, you're the owner. Hey, we're in business together, we're striving forward together with this. And if we actually, like you said, align together on the same purpose, is where then magic really happens.
Yep.
And because we've seen too many reps over the past few years, they're jumping from offer to offer to try to find that dream offer. And then when they find the dream offer, they jump off it anyway.
Yep.
Like you have to understand, as an owner, they don't want to bring somebody in that's going to be here for the next 2 to 6 months and
Totally.
just recycle that through. That doesn't help you build your brand. That doesn't help you scale. There's none of that. And so I think there's going to be something of that nature, right?
Yep.
One of the things, and I was talking about this with a newer rep just the other day, and he's in VIP. His name's Salo, and he is going to be getting UCM shortly. You know, so that's kind of saying, why haven't you yet? And it's a financial thing, and it is a true financial situation.
Totally.
But you know, was kind of talking about, he had a possibility of taking on a role, but it was kind of a newer setter position. And Rachel actually said, hey, you know, be careful that you don't get so good at setting, you can't move to closing. Now, ironically, the job was at Warrior Babe, who Nate, I just interviewed him the other week. He's an amazing guy, amazing systems process. And I kind of said, Rachel's 100% correct.
Love Nate. Yep.
Right. She's 100% correct, saying, hey, don't get boxed in. If you do really good, you're not going to move up. And that's true with some offers. So it's 100% true. And I said, you know, knowing Nate, though, he's always going to have someone. He's one of those guys. He's looking to train somebody to the point they're going to take his job so that he can move up. Right. And if you're a setter and you're performing, he's going to want to progress you up. So the fact you've had that conversation already is a concern. It's always a concern. So Rachel's 100% right. But in this situation, I don't see it being a problem to not take the offer and go up, you know, continue to progress and look for other offers, because maybe you become a closer on it and you freaking hate it. It is what it is. And that goes kind of with your 2 truths again, right? Like, hey, yeah, don't get stuck there. Don't take a job because of it in the right situation. And so I see there being a lot more transparency, which is one of the reasons why me starting this podcast, finding like, dude, because I'm in different groups, and some of the people in those groups, they're in masterminds that it's 2,000 to 3,000 people. dude, that's less than 1% of the online space. But they think they're in the ocean.
Yeah.
When in reality, they're in a water column. And there's so much other stuff going out there. And I think lots of times that becomes an issue too. And so I think there is I love your view, because I think it's going to happen too, that it's going to be a lot closer of alignment. One thing I do see changing with that as well, I do see some of these top tier players actually getting knocked down an inch or so, and the middle tier kind of coming up, and things starting to equalize a little bit more.
Yes, I think that's very possible as well. For me, like, I can just talk about what I've observed. Like I said, I don't know, too totally much about it. Like I said, I think there'll be some change adjustment. It's possible that there maybe drops down, just because you'll have the group of people, because businesses operate based on the market, right? Like, the people with the money, the customers, right, are going to vote with their dollars, right? So you said, like, some will vote down, and so they'll have to change and adjust in order to be able to continue to play the game, right? Or continue to stay at the level that they're at. And so I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be an absolute blast just to be able to see what happens, and what different ideas and perspectives out there. Because I'm sure there's people that they've never considered about doing a personal branding training or a networking training. I would love to be able to see their approaches and how they do it. I think it'll be so fun.
Yeah, and I think that's next kind of level that's going to come up, because I think with the online space, more people will need it, right? And it's interesting because my older brother, younger brother, they're both in corporate America. My dad was always in the online space. It's a totally different animal, and you're starting to see some of that corporate structure coming into the online space, which is good.
Yep.
But then also the nomad lifestyle, and those blending together is, again, it's an interesting thing to really watch. And I think each month that goes by, things have changed and everything's blending together, and it's going to be a really interesting kind of world we live in. Looking at the next 12, 24 months for like UCM, you guys have done a lot of changes just this year alone. What are some things in the back? I interviewed JD month and a half, 2 months ago or whatever it was, and I was able to get in a schedule. I know he's just working 24 hours a day, building stuff out, doing back stuff. It's awesome now seeing him doing interviews of people. He's getting a lot more videos out there, which is all amazing. So you guys, seems like you have some big things coming up, or some changes, some pivots. Where do you see UCM here in the next 12, 24 months?
Yeah, how I'm kind of looking at it, and some things that we've talked about is this idea of UCM kind of being like a career development services, like a university for remote sales. And so with that being said, like, there's going to be lots of different classes and aspects that are going to be more accessible to people. I think you're going to see a lot more mini courses that are going to be lower ticket that people then can buy into. If they want to bundle those together, that'll be awesome. We're going to see more of the community, some more of like the mastermind and the mentorship. But yeah, I think for us is, we're still trying to learn business too. There's still lots of parts of that. The marketing aspect has been a huge one for us that we've tried to figure out. Like, for us, we started at fulfillment and then sales. And then now it's like, we're working on marketing, where a lot of people work on marketing, then the sales, then the fulfillment. Right. Yeah. And so we did the order kind of backwards. And I think that's what's led to, I think, good things for a lot of people. And we have a really solid success rate, and we've had great people that we've been able to work with and get, help get great results, and which is awesome. So kind of, I think you're going to see a lot more marketing from us. And I think, in addition of setting up these offers just to be more accessible for people, that they can go about learning these essential aspects, these truths that are going to help them move forward in their careers, and being able to do that. But yeah, this idea of really like looking at it as a university, I almost want it to be looked at as like the Harvard of the remote sales space. And I think some cool things about Harvard is they just put out their data about their people, of saying, hey, here's income ranges, here's possible things that they work, like having just all this data that people can make a really informed decision. Yeah. But I also like how Harvard does not guarantee job placement. Like, hey, if you come to Harvard, right, like, you don't have a guarantee of a job. Like, you'll never hear them say it. But no one would basically go to Harvard and be like, yeah, if I go with them, I could never get a job kind of thing. I want us to kind of be looked at in a similar way. And that even though we don't have that guarantee, because people are the main variable. If they never show up to class, they never go learning about the stuff, they don't do their homework, they don't do the work, they're not going to get good grades. They're not going to pass. And even though they went to Harvard, they're not going to get a job or graduate. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so being able to have those kind of ideas, I think those are kind of the fun things over the next 1 to 2 years that we're really going to dial in. And I think you're going to see a big boom and increase with us here shortly.
That's a very cool shift, you know, and you just talking about that, it kind of just made me think of what I said earlier about changing people's perception of me, right? And you guys going to the Harvard, and everybody goes to Harvard, it's inherently understood.
Yeah.
I'm going there, I'm not guaranteed a job.
Yeah.
I'm going there, I'm going to learn the skills that people are going to recognize. It puts me at a higher status. More importantly, it's going to open up a ton of doors. It would be really, really difficult for me not to be able to land a job, networking and meeting the right people and getting those doors open now with being trained. And it's a very cool type of angle. I look forward to watching you guys over the next few months, the rest of this year, and moving forward as you kind of do that, because just in the past couple months, there's been big changes. Again, I can just tell with JD and getting on social media a lot more, especially with the video content, which I think is going to be a game changer for a lot of people, because since the beginning of this year, I think you've seen it too, the huge influx of all these sales trainers, right? And these young, there's nothing wrong with age.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's guys that are younger than I am, have more experience than me, and, you know, vice versa. And so it's not just the fact that they're like 24 to 26, but you know that they don't have the experience. That's really the problem. And they're trying to be sales trainers out there, right? Because they see it, people making money. I can do that. We saw it with the digital agencies. We saw it with online coaching. That's starting to die down right now. The creams are, you know, staying up at the top. But I look at seeing where you guys go, and I mean, it's amazing because you guys are in an amazing position already, but you guys are going to make a position of all your own, which is going to be awesome. And one thing I hate about this industry is fulfillment, because it's garbage. So I don't think JD did it backwards at all. He did it correctly. He's the way I did it. You focus on client results first. As you build that, too many people have nothing. And I know gurus, and you do as well, and the marketing's out there. You don't have a course. It doesn't matter. Market for it and build it as it goes. To me, that I understand. Again, I understand that perception, because a lot of people, they'll think for the next 2 years about making a perfect course and never take action. So I get what they're coming from, but at the same time, that's also telling some people that should never be a coach, a trainer, should never have their own business. Go ahead and just do it, right? And a bunch of people get burned, and that's horrible. So he did it completely right. Yeah. He's scaling right to make sure that you guys as clients are getting the result, and that's more commendable than anything there. Over the next 12 to 24 months, where's your life going?
Man, I think so. I'm married, so being able to start and have a family is kind of like in the cards that we're looking to be able to accomplish over the next couple of years. Me and my wife love being able to travel. An additional thing like that, a space that I'm really wanting to go about breaking into, is I really feel for the college students. I live in between two basically college universities in Utah. And I mean, they're really close. It's kind of like Duke. I'm not comparing them to this eliteness, but
I get what you're saying.
In distance, like it's like they're not far, like they're very close to them. They're fairly big universities. And just being able to hear just the story of these college students, that they are, you know, going out into the workforce and they don't know how to land a job. They don't know what they need to do to get the job. And they're sending in resumes, rejection all the time. I remember talking with a gentleman that applied to, I think it was 3,201 jobs, and just had some interviews, just really wasn't able to move forward. And he was just like, am I not putting in the work? Right. And it's just how things have basically changed because of the online space and kind of the job boards. It's made it easier than ever to apply to job. That's how he's able to do 3,200, right? Yep. But it's made it harder than ever to actually get hired at a job.
Yeah.
And so I want to be able to basically start giving some resources out to these college students that before they graduate or they've just recently graduated, into helping them have a job landing plan that if they like, hey, I've wanted to work at Google, or I've wanted to work at Tesla, or I've wanted to work at SpaceX, or I've wanted to work at Quaker, or I wanted to work at Kellogg's, right? Like Amazon, whatever it is, right? That they have a plan, have a job searching process that's going to open up those opportunities and be able to land those jobs. Just because I heard a crazy statistic, I read these all the time just because I love learning about the hiring, the job searching, all that stuff, that it's like in the US, it's like 27% of people that graduate college actually use their degrees in the jobs. And of that 27%, it's like 52% are accountants and elementary ed teachers, right? So you have most people aren't even using their degrees to get in the thing. And so no wonder we see such low job satisfaction. They went to school for 4 years, most likely studying what they like, right? And there's some details there that maybe they pivot or whatever, but studied something that they liked, and now they're working somewhere else because they needed a job to pay the bills. And oftentimes it's just they could accept whatever because it's like, I need to pay bills. I'm out of college. I can't like keep going with that. So they accept they work at Walmart or they work at whatever, and it like is, so that's what I hope to be able to do over the next couple of years.
That's awesome. You would be amazing at it, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. The long game is to be able to go and speak at universities and do workshops there. That would be like awesome. It'd be so cool.
It's gonna be fun watching you do. If you need any help with anything, please reach out. Because I think that's a really sweet thing, and I think a lot of people do need it. And it is interesting because a lot of people do that. And like you said, kind of like what you and your wife, you're planning to start to have a family. So you graduate college, you get a job going, hey, this one's just gonna be part-time. I just need to pay the bills. It's not anything what you want to do. Then all of a sudden you get married, you have kids, and all of a sudden now you're 29, you've been at this career for 3 years, and now you can't leave it because you've got a family to take. And all of a sudden you're at 45 years old going, what the F, right? Type of scenario.
Yeah. And it's kind of going back to that same idea. It's kind of like with the sales training. It's like, all right, you've been through our course. Now you're certified. They give them a butt slap and they're like, go apply for jobs and go land them. And they're like, I don't know how to go about landing jobs. Like I was never trained for this. And now I go to people, I've gone through this course, right? Can you hire me? And they're like, no. And they're like, what? Right. And then it's like, no one can land the jobs and it's impossible to land the jobs. And it's similar with the college, right? It's like, hey, now you have a degree, butt slap, right? Of courage, and, go and get one. And it's not working out for a majority of people, It's really sad. And so I want to go help with fixing that. Typically, like, obviously the best time for these, college students to network is like their junior, senior, like in college, ultimately, right? Because they're able to go about doing all of these things and adjusting there. And a lot of people will have some grace on them because it's like, oh, I totally get it. I was in college, right? I'm glad you're even doing this. This is awesome, right? And it can open up those doors to be able to go and I have it's kind of like a cousin-in-law. We have some family friends that that I grew up with like as a baby, and one of the girls' husband. He's been able to work at like Adobe and sell for them and all these big wig places. And it was because when he was in college, he networked and they were like, you seem really great. And so he was able to intern all these amazing places. And he didn't come from a really prolific school. It was because he went and networked, he shared his story. He has a personal brand. It's awesome. And he's doing all these things and it's opening doors. And now he's working at these amazing places. Right. And so being able to help give a structure that people can do that is kind of what I'm looking to do.
I think it's awesome. And actually blending it, my brain goes to you blending the remote with the corporate, because I think there's a lot of remote sales people out there. They would actually be better if they were doing a corporate sales job. They would have more stability, make more money. I think that it would fit their role better. And vice versa. There's a lot of people in corporate sales that would be a lot better remote. And I think intertwining some of that stuff would be huge. And if you're doing both, you're opening that up. And I think there are certain corporate American sales jobs that are technically going to switch to a remote style as well. So it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years with that. One of the things you just posted about just the other day.
Yep.
David Goggins 4x4x48.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know, you're running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Essentially, you're running a marathon over 2 days. And
Yeah.
The hard part isn't just running the marathon portion, but it's working out for an hour, having 3 hours, and then having to do that again and doing that for 2 days straight. It's a very difficult thing. And when I saw Hunter post about it and some comments and, hey, I'm doing this and doing that, I wanted to reach out personally and give you some advice first off, and I held
Yeah.
back. I didn't want to give you some advice mid-tier. That doesn't do any help.
Dang you, Scott. I need
There was some stuff there. Now, if you do it again, I'll give you some advice of ways
Yeah.
to help some of the struggles you had. But I did it a few years back as well. And I shared that post with you. And actually, I think I might share it actually again.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But what was your experience with that? Number one, why did you do it? Let's go that route first. Why did you do it?
I'm soft, man. Trying to get hard, you know. I think for me, I've had a very great upbringing. I have a really great wife. I think in a lot of ways I have a great life. I think that's awesome. And I think for me, I was like, I needed a bit more suffering just to be able to toughen up and to learn some lessons and to, you know, kind of push myself more, because especially when you're like feeling good and you've had a great upbringing, like you don't have to probably push yourself as much as other people would to just get to a point or to get ahead. And so I am really grateful for that. And I realized I need to kind of work on paying my dues from there. And so I followed David Goggins for a long time, love him, have listened to and read his books multiple times over. I probably read both his books 5-6 times over. I mean, I don't know how you can't feel motivated and inspired to go about changing your life and doing hard things than him. And for me, I'm just kind of thinking about the future as well, of like, the world is probably just going to get tougher in lots of ways. And there's always going to be new situations that are hard. And so I'd love to be able to instill that lesson into my children of like, you can do hard things and here's how you go about doing it. And so these were some of the main reasons why I wanted to go about even trying this challenge, despite not having the training, despite the ignorance, despite the lack of ability to be able to accomplish it, just to be able to send it and just really just see if I can push myself as far as possible.
Yeah, I love your reason. There's so many good reasons there. That at the very end of it, it was one of the things that I give even more props on. You said, even though not training for it, not knowing what I'm getting and set myself into, it's one of those things of I need to jump into the head first. You know, I've been in health and wellness for 20 years. So me going into that challenge, I knew what I was gonna encounter. I've done Tough Mudders and things like that. I hate running. I just hate long distance running. So when I did it, I actually lifted, and that was a benefit. And I kind of mentioned this to you. It's a benefit of having your own fitness facility. So I was able to change it up. I had my spin bike at my house. So that's what I did overnight. You know, there was a couple times where I just 3 flights of stairs up and down for an hour straight, you know, and they were weighted. And then there are other ways of continue just moving, from farmer walking for an hour straight, essentially with different weights and never taking a break, is really what the goal here is. And you learn a lot through it. And so obviously the tough part, right? Like exhaustion gets in, you're never getting really a full night's sleep, those type of pieces. So what were some key things that happened to you mentally? Let's not even talk about the physical, just mentally going through the process that really huge beneficial to you.
Yeah, so many things. I wrote a post of kind of like the 14 lessons I learned, and those were all kind of like those mental lessons. And so some of those things were, is when I was like going and running, I started at 8 p.m. on a Sunday, and I ran my first 4 miles. And then, you know, I stayed up 12 a.m., right? Ran another 4 miles. So it's the middle of the night. I had flashlights. A deer scared the
awesome.
living Jesus out of me. And kind of like it ran really quick. I was like, freaked me out. And then 4 a.m. and on from there, once I hit basically 4 a.m. So I had ran 12 miles. That's basically the most I'd ever ran basically in a sitting. Now I played soccer. Even though I played soccer, I hated just running in like a straight line. Like I needed to be playing basketball, playing football.
I do that stuff. I'll play hours, but you just had me run down the street. Yeah.
Correct. And so like, I think previous to that, even with all that experience, I probably had ran more than this, but I was like, I don't think I ever sat and ran more than like maybe like 6 miles. And so I was already double that. I was like 12 miles in.
Yeah.
And this is without training, without a lot of effort here. And my body was breaking down. My kidneys were in intense pain. My hip flexors, every time I lift them up, both of them, it was just like it hurt so bad. My plantar fasciitis was just so intensely painful. Like when I was finishing like the last like quarter mile of the third time through. So this is, I mean, we're at like 11 miles and 3/4. My left arch, like I swear it was like it turned into a baseball. It just like, and I was like, oh my goodness. And so at mile 12 after I completed, I basically like hobbled in. I was like, I don't know if I can go any farther. I don't think I can continue going. Like, I just don't think it's physically possible. And so,
Then you didn't read David Goggins' book. I'm just messing with you. Broken feet, broken shins, just duct tape it up and go.
Well, yeah, I was like, well, I don't think my kidneys have shut down yet, and I haven't pooped up my back, and I'm not pissing blood yet. So maybe there is some more room to go further, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of talked with some friends, and I thought I was going to kind of throw in the towel and just be like, hey, this was attempt one. I did push this farther. And I was talking with some friends, and they were like, you know what, you made a great attempt. And something in my mind was like, screw it. Like, let's just like keep going, And so what I started to do is kind of do like a more aggressive walk, right? Just because like I like literally couldn't. And so then it was, I was running at 8 a.m. or 12 a.m. or 12 p.m., 4 p.m. And it was like 103 degrees at this point, right? It's just like pretty hot in Utah where I'm from. And then I went at 8 o'clock at night, and my wife went with me for the last 4 miles. And I was like, I think I'm hitting 24 miles. And I think I was like, after this, I think I'm done. I'm like walking out there, and my wife is like, you look like a zombie from The Walking Dead. Like how you were like moving. She's like, this is like sad to watch, right? Like, and it was just amazing to me, right? I'd crawled the last 100 feet, right? I literally on my knees to like get to the house. And basically I had thrown the towel at 24 miles. And just the mental aspect, it was just like, I wanted to quit. And I said, screw it, we're going to do this. And my brain came up with the willpower, the ideas on how to keep going in order to make it work. And that was shocking. That once I was like, screw you, like, we're going to freaking do this to the brain, because the brain is going to be like, it wants to preservate, right? Like it wants to protect you.
Correct.
When I was like, screw it, we're going to keep going. It was amazing. All of the ideas and energy and willpower flowed to saying, okay, if we're going to do this, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see what I was able to do and push my body through and stuff like that. And I ended up doing double than I had thought. I was going to stop at 12 miles after running it. Once again, it was like double what I think I had ran. And then I did 24 miles. And then when I went back to kind of research and to like reflect on it, I realized all the people I got tips from were ultra marathon runners. And I was like, that should have been, that should
number one,
right? That should have been, I should have picked up on that the first time. Like, oh, wait, I've never ran an ultra marathon. The ones completing it are ultra marathon runners. So I learned a lot. I think some of the amazing lessons that came from it is like to kind of just embrace the suffering, like, and it's amazing how far our bodies can go within that. And overcoming it despite immense amount of suffering. It was really interesting to see that. I don't think I've ever experienced before this idea of like a pain cave and entering that. I don't think I've ever experienced it before in my whole life. And to finally be able to tap into it and being able to see how far the body can go was really shocking to me. It was really cool.
When I told you, thank you for doing that, like you're inspiring me to do it, like the past 2 years since I left my fitness businesses, I haven't been as hard on myself, I guess. Like you said, the pain cave, I haven't put myself there in 2 years. I need to do it again. And that's an exciting thing. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. I mean, Andy Frisella has 75 hard, there's a lot of different things that you can do to get yourself there. But the thing I loved about the 4x4 48 challenge, just like the 75 hard, there are certain points where your mind's so playing games with you
Oh
And,
man.
and you brought up the key thing of, hey, all my energy focused on how I'm going to make this happen now. So many times we're living a too easy life. The moment the smallest little thing, and we immediately, oh, there's no way around. Like, are you joking? Right. The first time I was introduced to David Goggins was in the book from Jesse Itzler, where Jesse hired him to come to his house, right? And the key thing in there that he talks about, which you just alluded to, when your body's ready to quit, you're actually about 40%.
Yeah.
You can read that and understand it. You have no clue what it means until you are in that position. And that is the moment that you hit. And that's a game-changing situation mentally, experience-wise. And that's how you get better.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's actually how you level up in life. That's why all these guys talk about get hard, all of them. Jocko's a huge guy of mine as well.
Cameron Haynes. I don't know if you've looked into him.
Yep.
Oh,
yep. Yeah, I think he's been on Joe Rogan and Andy Frisella's.
Yep.
And I've got a friend that she actually went through grade school, Catholic school with me. She's an ultra marathoner.
amazing.
Another buddy I went to high school, he just did 150 straight, last summer.
Insane.
So I've got to these people, and so I know the mentality it takes. And one of the things, like, if you decide to do it again, I mean, there's so many things, like you said, you were taking tips from ultra marathoners, people that
so beyond
yeah.
what I'm physically able to do right now. Yeah.
Yep. But if you did it again, you could go 6 months and not do anything until then. And you could make some slight tweaks, like cucumbers, watermelon are two of my favorite things.
Oh yeah.
So they actually put hydration into your cells.
Dang, that would have been a good idea.
Apples are the same thing.
Yeah.
So lots of times when we drink water, we're actually not hydrating ourselves. So doing something like that, especially you're doing that in like one of the hottest weeks of the year too. That's a huge aspect. There's also different things you can do when you're talking like glutamine, creatine, different amino acids to get your body to help recover. Different things like turmeric, ginger, boswellos, things you can do to help with the inflammation. So you can kind of be supplementing those between, so your body's actually able to actually recover and repair a lot quicker, and it makes it a lot easier. The kidney issues, that's why I didn't respond to you. I wasn't sure if it was actually a kidney issue or if the fact just the lower back is hurting because hip flexors are tightening up so much. You're leaning forward, you're getting tired, you're just moving really bad. So it could be, multiple different factors there. And so some of it too is learning how to physically recover. Hey, I need to stretch for 15 minutes, go relax, or go take a cold shower, those type of scenarios to get my body so it's recovering quicker. There's all these little tricks that you can do that help through it. Because part of it is, like you said, the pain cave, but I always tell people there's a difference between pain and stupidity. Right? You gotta
be stupid to enter the pain cave, Scott.
No, the stupidity part is when, and I'm not calling David Goggins stupid, but when you start breaking your shins, you breaking your feet, you're causing an injury that, like, in your life, do you need to do that at the moment? You don't. So that's the stupidity part, right? It's the understanding, hey, I can push farther. But then there's a point of, hey, I injured myself just to prove a point. I'm not the biggest proponent on that. I know some people love doing that, right? So, but I'm glad you did it, and it is a great experience. You kind of jazzed me up to figure out when I'm going to do that here too. I'll probably wait till September, get myself in a little bit, but it was a life changer for me. And so I'm really glad that you did it and posted about it even more so, because it relit a fire inside me that I'm like, geez, I didn't realize how much I'd missed that.
Yeah, it's a good fun. And I want to go back. I'm like looking forward to attempt 2 of it. There was a buddy that I was going to do with it over the summer. He ruptured his Achilles with our basketball team, which is devastating. But he's walking around doing better now. But yeah, he's like, hey, next year, like, let's attempt it. And I'll have like a buddy there, which will be pretty fun. But yeah, I'm even looking like maybe give me 6 months to maybe train a bit more attempt to and see how far I've gone. If I can get to 32 miles, 36, or even the full 48, that would be awesome. Yeah, one thing that was another tough part about it is within that like 20, I guess it's even a little bit longer because I mean I was up before then, on that Sunday. I had only slept over that basically 2 days, an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That was it. And you're just running and eating and recovering. And then I even had work, right? I had meetings and I had stuff like that in between that I was planning.
Yep.
And it was intense. It was awesome. It was awesome though, just to be able to see. One of the main lessons was like, we are so much more capable and unlimited than we think.
Agreed.
Right? It's these labels, like you talked about, that just they're the governors in our engines and in our brains that stop us. But then when we go to challenge that or remove that governor, right, it's amazing how to be far to be pushed. And so once I hit 24 miles, I think I felt fulfilled. I felt satisfied. I didn't feel like I failed. Like, wow, what a loser, right? Like you didn't do the 48, right? Like, I mean, like I said, I crawled the last 100 feet. Like I could not, like I literally laid it all out there. And so I felt super grateful and fulfilled in that attempt. It was.
And I like the term the governor, they have those on cars, right? So you can't go past a certain point. And it's right when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, I love that. I love that. And then my brain immediately went to, dude, you put a governor back on yourself because you haven't been pushing it.
Yep.
And, talking about that we can push, but we have to be careful. And it's one of the things I talk about, like 1% better every single day, right? Of like, season for a reason, you're doing certain things, pushing yourself, getting in that pain cave. That could be physically, that could be mentally, that could be hours. There's a lot of different things you can do to improve and push yourself out of comfort zones. And that physically, I have not been doing that. And I think that, I post about it quite a bit. The one thing I love about fitness, how much it relates to the rest of your life, right? Like the whole point when you work out, go to failure, because at that point is when you're actually improving. And too many in life, we just go until it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm good. Right.
I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. And so yeah, no, it's awesome that you did that. And if there's anything you need there to kind of help train with it too, let me know. And I'm figuring out time and I'll put it on the calendar, and I'm going to do it as well. And I'll keep you updated on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear you with that. Another thing, I mean, that just kind of came to mind as you were talking. I think this is helpful. Like, and I heard JD talk about this, and it made so much sense. I think sometimes we always look at maybe like depression or these like lulls. Oftentimes we just think depression is just sadness, but for him, he was like, for me, depression was just not feeling anything.
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, that's really interesting. And so I feel like I've definitely gone through some lows of that, of just like, I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm not really feeling anything. And so being able to kind of shock your system into some suffering just to allow you to be able to feel. And I know this can be taken to extreme. I know this could even be taken out of context, because we've seen individuals who try and feel things in other ways that are super harmful and super unhealthy. And so I felt like this was within reason.
Yeah.
But being able to kind of experience some of those things and some of these feelings, like I really felt alive as a result of these things. And I really learned that even going through some of these suffering and these hardships, it made me feel alive. And I was like, man, this is living, right? Like I'm able to tap into my body, and I had these endorphins flowing, and maybe I had some stress from some cortisol. I was able to feel a lot of different things. And so I was really grateful for that, to allow me to just be more aligned with really living life and experiencing it. It was a huge opening for me. So I'm excited to go and pursue that more. And so now I'm really doing like 2-a-days and stuff like that. Like been doing hikes with my sister while I'm here in Vegas. We've been going on some runs with each other. I'm like, my plantar fasciitis is still, I'm working through it, but still going for like a couple mile runs and stuff. It's been fun though.
Awesome. It's the classic Navy SEAL saying, weakness is pain, or pain is weakness leaving the body, right? And you kind of experience that. And I saw JD's post about that as well. And I didn't comment on it because it hit very home for me too, because I've gone through periods in my life like that where you don't feel anything.
Yeah.
And whenever I noticed it, is just like what he noticed it. You actually weren't doing anything. That's why you weren't feeling anything.
Right.
And you have to move forward in something to get out of that. And pain, to your point, right? There's a lot of unhealthy things you can do that people to feel that we won't even go down that rabbit hole. But pushing yourself to a physical pain was pushing your limits physically to get better, right? Like you're getting a positive result by pushing yourself that hard, and it snaps you out of it at times. And the chemical, physiological aspect of the serotonins, dopamines, all of these things of when you push yourself harder, it helps with you to start feeling things on that level as well, right? And it has a drive and excitement, desire to actually start moving forward again. And not enough people in society, when they're in that place of doing nothing and feeling nothing, they have no idea how to get out and don't have the ability to push themselves out. And to your point of kind of doing that just to see, I mean, it helps tremendously, and kind of what JD's post alluded to as well. Hey, I had to push myself in some area, right?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes when I fast too, I might fast for 3 days, right? It's hey, I'm focusing on being able to control this suffering, so to speak. But God made our bodies, we can go 30 days without eating. So why do we have to eat every 2 hours?
Right. It's the addiction.
Right.
Yeah, it's the addiction to food. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And I've talked with my wife, because now I'm like tossing around all these other things. I was like, man, I was like, I tossed out 7-day fast or water fast. And I think that was too big of a jump for her.
Yep.
And I should have started with like a 2-day, like I do once a month, I do 24-hour fasts. I've been doing, and I've done that since I was 15, so this has been 13 years I've been doing those. But yeah, just to be able to do it even a little bit farther, like 2 days or 3 days, just kind of experience it. And I've heard there's some great effects, beneficial effects from it, but for me, it would be the mental aspect of it.
It is. And it's one of the key things I had clients do that I used to help reverse rheumatoid arthritis, because after 48 hour, technically science kind of shows that 32 to 36 hours part kicks in, which is autophagy, which is your body's basically taking all the bad unhealthy cells, eating them, destroying them, replacing them with good healthy ones, can restart your immune system. So there's a lot of huge benefits to fasting by far, if done right. Just like anything else, done incorrectly can be a big deal. Now, I've never gone past 5 days personally, but yeah, I mean, there's people that do 14 days, 30 days.
I'd probably max out at 7. I've heard about that 7 number, but yeah, I would probably work up to it, 2-day, 3-day, 5-day, then maybe to 7. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of like practicing to do the 4x4x4 48 rather than just jump all into it, right? So well, Hunter, dude, I'm so glad we were able to do this today.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on. Like I said, I've seen all of the people that you've had on, super humbled that you'd be even asked me to come on and do this. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've super enjoyed talking with you, and I always appreciate your insights as well. I love reading, especially your comments on different people's posts, and they're so insightful. They're so in depth, and I think I appreciate you sharing those things.
And I have an open door. If you want to ever do this again, I would love to have it on, because I think there's always new things we can discuss. And I can't thank you enough for the friendship we've developed over the past few years following each other, and even more the past few months since me joining UCM. And we don't get enough time to actually do even this type of face-to-face stuff. And I would love to even, have that happen more often too.
Yeah, come to your lake house sometime and have a party, man.
You're invited. You're invited anytime you want. I tell that to people quite a bit. I'm waiting for someone to take me up on it. Fly up here to Minnesota and come up to the lake and spend it up there. So
I've never been to Minnesota, but it seems like an awesome place that I'd love to be able to check out.
It is. And I've never been to Utah either. And it's actually a place on my bucket list also. So we'll have to make something work sometime in the future.
Eventually I want to do the Moab 100, that like 100-mile race in Moab. Yep. And I mean, that's in southern Utah-ish. And so it'd be fun to do that. So that's what I'm working towards. I have a friend that's an ultra marathon runner, and he's like, yeah, 100-mile races are like a good distance for me. And I was like, okay, whatever, dude. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Those people make me jealous. And also I'm like, there's part of me, just like you doing, hey, I'm gonna try the Goggins challenge, that I want to do it, but gosh, it's just watching people run is not fun. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to maybe overcome that and push that at some point. But yeah, again, it was great having you on, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks again, Scott. I appreciate it so much.
You too.